Welcome to the Vault.
I remember having a good friend of mine read the early drafts of my book. And this woman was really very much into English literature. And she just couldn't believe that William Butler Yeats could be dyslexic. And I said, oh no, it's the other way around. He and General George Patton, out of the 11 people I deal with, are the most dyslexic people. It's very easy to show. And what you really need to understand is that verbal proficiency is not the same thing as being good at the mechanics of language. And particularly in poetry, you're talking about powerful language. You're paying attention to the sound of the language, you're paying attention to the rhythm of the language, and mostly you're paying attention to the metaphors. Poetry is essentially tied to metaphor, and metaphor typically, they're always called images in the business, but it conjures up a picture in your mind. And some of the most famous poems have a very detailed description of a metaphor. Like if you go back to John Donne, he takes a compass, a circle drawing compass, and he's talking about a love relationship between the husband and wife, but it's referring to this mechanical instrument. But there's only one metaphor in the poem, and he does all the statements about the love relationship refer to this one metaphor. And Yeats is strange in the sense, delightful, is that one of his main metaphors he used in his later poetry is two cones. It's like solid geometry. Two cones you put together like ice cream cones, and where the bottom of the point of one cone is in this big open mouth of the other. So you go back and forth. Like he called them gyres or gyres. And so where there's a big circle and a point, and then as the big circle gets smaller and goes to the point, the other one gets bigger. It's just an inverse relationship. It's a mathematical thing. But he's using this as a metaphor to talk about all kinds of things in the world and politics and everything. It's how one thing gets bigger and the other thing gets smaller. But he refers explicitly to these gyres. And I just thought that there is another metaphor, something that you would say in a lesser poet, you'd say, well, you can't talk about poetry and love affairs or something like that and use geometry. But in fact, this is what Yeats does. I mean, he's talking about these things, and also that when he would compose his poetry, some people would say he'd start with a rhythm. It's almost like he's getting a pulse, and back into the meaning and back into the imagery. Now, all of this is wonderful stuff when you're talking about poetry or lyrics to music or whatever. This is art, but it's very different from a professor who is using big words and droning on in a boring way and putting everybody to sleep. But the professor is going to know how to spell the words, and Yeats can't spell the words. He's never going to learn. This is one of the problems. No matter how much remediation you do, people because I know, because I'm one of these people, well, you do get better and better at times. But if your memory is memory for the sound of the word and not the spelling of the word, it's the phonemic rather than lexical meaning. And then your memory is going to come through in a way that the spelling is very secondary and may or may not be right.
Hi, I'm Harvey Hubble. You're watching Seedling.tv, nourishing mind, body, and planet. Subscribe now. It's good for you.